My name's Colin. I'm 36 years old, and for the past 4 years I've worked from home as a technical editor. Basically, I take dense manuals, jargon-filled reports, and convoluted corporate documents and make them readable, at least readable enough that someone doesn't fall asleep halfway through. It's not the most thrilling gig, but it pays well, and it lets me stay home with our rescue dog, Max, who spends most days snoring under my desk like a tiny, furry engine. My wife, Taylor, is the opposite of me in almost every way. She's sharp, driven, always on the move. She works as a client manager at a marketing agency in downtown Austin, one of those fast-paced, coffee-fueled environments where Slack messages never stop and deadlines feel like landmines. We used to joke that our schedules balanced each other out. I was the quiet hum to her hurricane. Lately, though, it felt less like balance and more like distance. That Wednesday started the same as most. I woke up before the sun, made coffee, and started chipping away at a set of software guides that might as well have been written in Martian. Around noon, I stood up to stretch and wandered into the kitchen to make a quick lunch. Just a sandwich and some chips, nothing fancy. I remember it clearly because I was halfway through scrolling a Reddit thread about smart thermostats when the front door opened. That was strange. Taylor has keys, of course, but she rarely, if ever, comes home during the workday. She's told me before that once she's at the office, she's locked in until at least 5. Meetings, calls, briefs, the whole agency circus. So when I heard the click of the door and the soft rush of air from the hall, I thought maybe something was wrong. I called out, "Tay?" Yeah, her voice answered light, a little breathless. "It's me." She stepped inside, and immediately I noticed something was off. She was dressed for work, same as always, blouse tucked neatly into a fitted skirt, blazer still on, heels that looked great but always made her complain about her feet by dinner. But her face, her expression, wasn't what I expected. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, like she was checking to make sure everything was where it was supposed to be. "What's going on?" I asked, moving toward her. "You okay?" Yeah, totally." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you paste on when you're trying to pass for fine. "Just had a weird window between meetings, thought I'd come home and grab a bite with you." "Really?" I asked. I tried to keep my tone casual, but my radar was already pinging. "You never have time in the middle of the day." She shrugged, brushing past me into the kitchen. "Yeah, I mean, today's been nuts. But I had this tiny break and didn't want to sit in the office kitchen with passive-aggressive Susan talking about her Whole30 diet again. Figured home was better." She set her purse down on the counter, and that's when I saw it, the flash drive. Small. Silver. Unlabeled. It was in her hand, clutched so tightly I hadn't even noticed it at first. She held onto it for a moment longer than necessary, then placed it on the windowsill above the sink. Not gently. Almost like she was discarding it. The sound of it hitting the wood was barely audible, but I heard it. Like a pebble dropped into a pond. "What's that?" I asked. She didn't look at it. "Oh, just something from work. Junk, probably. I think IT gave it to me and I forgot to return it." I raised an eyebrow. "You gonna leave it there?" She waved a hand dismissively. "I'll take it back later." That could have been the end of it. I could have let it slide, believed her, moved on. But I didn't. Something about the way she said it, the rushed tone, the careless shrug, didn't line up with how Taylor usually handled things. She's meticulous. She doesn't just leave tech lying around. And definitely not something from IT. We made small talk while she threw together a salad. Well, she talked. I listened, watching her from across the kitchen island, trying to read her face. She told me a story about a client who wanted a commercial *T because the actor's sweater wasn't emotionally resonant enough. Normally, that would have made me laugh. Taylor's agency world is full of that kind of absurdity. But I couldn't shake the sense that this lunch was a cover and excuse for something else. I glanced toward the living room window, and that's when I saw it. A dark sedan parked at the curb. Engine running. Windows tinted. It hadn't been there earlier, I was sure of it. I squinted, trying to get a better look, but before I could, the car slowly pulled away. I looked back at Taylor. She'd gone quiet. Her fork was idle on her plate, her phone suddenly in her hand. She noticed me staring. "What?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. "Just, you sure everything's okay?" She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she smiled again. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" I nodded. "No reason." We finished eating in silence. Her phone buzzed twice, once with a text, once with a call, but she didn't answer either. She glanced at it, frowned, then flipped it face down. I watched the whole thing, saying nothing. After a few more minutes, she stood up and started collecting her things. I should get back. Meetings and all that. I followed her to the door. She leaned in for a kiss, just a quick one on the cheek. Not unusual, but distant. Like a coworker saying goodbye after a coffee run. Love you, she said, like a reflex. You too, I replied. She paused for half a beat, then left. The door clicked shut and the house went still. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the closed door. The sandwich I'd made sat untouched on the table. My appetite was gone. Max wandered into the room, sensing something was off, and curled up at my feet. Even he was quiet. After a while, I walked back into the kitchen and picked up the flash drive from the windowsill. It was warm, like it had been in her hand for longer than she let on. No label. No markings. Just a tiny, metallic question mark. I set it down again and stared at it, my mind racing. Something had changed. I didn't know what yet, but the feeling in my gut was loud and insistent. Taylor hadn't just come home for lunch. She was hiding something. And that something had just walked through our front door, smiled at me, and left behind a silver breadcrumb that was now burning a hole through the air. After Taylor left, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, just staring at the flash drive. I didn't touch it again, didn't plug it in. Not yet. It felt like a live wire, humming with unspoken things. So I left it where it was and went back to my office, though calling it work for the rest of that day would have been generous. I opened a document I was supposed to be editing, a 100-page compliance manual, and stared at the first paragraph for 15 minutes straight. Words blurred into shapes, shapes into noise. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but my thoughts were somewhere else entirely. What kind of IT department gives out random flash drives and then lets employees discard them like trash? The question looped in my head. That and the image of the dark sedan pulling away the moment Taylor stepped inside. I kept replaying it, trying to assign meaning to make it fit some benign explanation. Maybe it was a coworker giving her a ride. Maybe it was a rideshare. Maybe. But that look in her eyes. That flicker of panic. No, it wasn't nothing. That afternoon, I opened a blank document and started making a list, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Something in me had shifted, and once I stepped across that threshold, I couldn't go back. Things that haven't felt right lately. Her phone. Always within arm's reach. Always face down. Never a sound. It used to ding constantly, group chats, work alerts, random Instagram reels she'd show me while we ate dinner. Lately, nothing. Silence. Except for the rare times it buzzed and she'd swipe it away like it was a mosquito. Late nights. Not every night, but more than usual. She'd say she had late meetings or happy hour with coworkers. Fair enough, her job could be unpredictable. But she used to text me pictures when she was out, drinks clinking, blurry selfies, goofy group sh*ts. Now, nothing. Not a single photo in weeks. The yoga night. That one stuck out more than the rest. She said she was going to a class at her old studio trying to reconnect with herself. That's what she told me, at least. I got an email from that same studio a few hours later. They'd temporarily closed for renovations. I asked her about it and she barely blinked. Oh, it was a private session. One-on-one. My instructor knows a back-end trance. It sounded rehearsed, but I didn't press her. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her then. The lingerie. I found it by accident while folding laundry, a new set, black lace, tags still attached. Not something I'd seen her wear. Not something I remembered her buying. When I asked, she laughed, brushed it off. It's for a girls' night. We're doing a kind of silly gift swap thing. But she left the house that night wearing heels and that soft red lipstick she usually only wears for weddings or anniversaries. I stayed up until she came back, sometime past midnight. No pictures. No stories. Just a tired I'm wiped and a kiss on the forehead before she disappeared into the bathroom. Each item on the list made my stomach turn. Not because they were proof, not yet, but because they built something more dangerous, a pattern. And patterns don't lie. That night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep. Taylor was beside me, scrolling through her phone in the dark, the screen casting a faint glow across the ceiling. When I glanced over, I caught her expression in profile, focused, unreadable. Then she turned the screen away from me and rolled onto her side. My heart thudded in my chest. Something was unraveling between us, thread by thread, and she either didn't notice or didn't care. The next morning, I woke up before her. That used to be my favorite part of the day, watching her breathe softly, the sun creeping through the blinds just enough to light her face. But not that morning. That morning, I watched her like someone studying a stranger. After she left for work, I walked through the house like it was unfamiliar territory. The coffee mug she used still sat in the sink. Her perfume, light, floral, distant, lingered near the bathroom door. I passed the windowsill in the kitchen and saw the flash drive right where she'd left it. Like a dare. I didn't pick it up. Not yet. Instead, I spent the day doing what I do best, quietly paying attention. I noticed which emails she forwarded me from work. I noticed that the group chat with her sister, which used to pop off constantly, hadn't made a sound in 2 weeks. I texted her once around 2 p.m. to say I was ordering Thai for dinner. She didn't answer until 4:17. Sounds good, smiley face, with a smiley that felt like a sticker slapped onto a crack. That night, we ate quietly. She picked at her food, said something about being exhausted, and disappeared into the shower for nearly 40 minutes. When she came out, she didn't sit next to me on the couch. Just grabbed her phone and wandered into the bedroom. I stayed behind, hands clenched in my lap. How long had I been making excuses for her? And how many more times would I do it? The next day, I checked our shared calendar. Empty. Taylor didn't always update it, but she used to keep it at least loosely accurate, especially if she had a work dinner or weekend plans. But the past month? Almost completely blank. I started looking at our Amazon orders. Packages had been showing up with more frequency, small boxes, unmarked bags. When I checked the history, I saw a few lingerie purchases, some higher-end cosmetics she didn't normally buy, and a set of Bluetooth headphones I'd never seen her wear. Each detail felt like a pin stuck in a map I didn't know I was building. Then came the tipping point. Friday night, she told me she had a strategy dinner with a client. That's how she phrased it, like she was consulting a political campaign, not selling it space. I asked if it was at the office. She shook her head. No, we're meeting at Oak and Iron downtown. It's quieter. I nodded slowly. That was the same place we'd gone for our 3rd anniversary. In * mate moody lighting. Expensive. Not the kind of spot you take someone for a quick pitch over tapas. Do you want me to drive you? I offered, keeping my voice light. She hesitated. No, it's fine. I'm Ubering. I'll be late anyway, no point making you wait around. She wore the black dress I'd complimented a dozen times. The one with the open back. I stood in the hallway and watched her zip it up, the way she tilted her head to pin in her earrings, the perfume she chose, Chanel. Not the usual citrusy one. This was deeper, muskier. A scent she used to save for me. When she left, I stood there for a long moment, the door clicking shut like punctuation on a sentence I didn't understand. And then I turned to the windowsill. The flash drive was still there. Still waiting. Still silent. I picked it up. The flash drive was colder than I expected. That probably meant nothing, but it stuck with me, how something so small, so weightless, could feel like it was carrying something enormous. I sat at my desk for a few minutes before plugging it in. Just staring at the little metal rectangle between my fingers like it might sprout teeth and bite me. Max, my dog, lay curled up on the rug nearby, oblivious. Lucky him. I envied that simplicity, eat, sleep, exist. No suspicions, no flash drives full of potential heartbreak. When I finally clicked it in, the drive whirred to life with a quiet hum. One folder. No name. Just a single file inside. A video less than 10 minutes long. For a split second, I thought about closing the window and walking away. I even hovered the mouse over the eject button. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I had spent weeks trying to connect dots without knowing what shape I was drawing. This, whatever it was the answer. I double-clicked. The video opened full screen. There was no title card, no timestamp. Just a room, a hotel room by the look of it. Not ours. Not anywhere I recognized. The decor was expensive in that generic way, gray curtains, dim yellow lamps, and abstract painting bolted to the wall. The kind of place built for discretion. The kind of place that costs too much for something you don't want on record. A woman stepped into frame. Taylor. I froze. Her back was to the camera at first, but I'd know her anywhere. Her posture. Her hair falling slightly out of its tie. The black lace lingerie she wore, the same set I'd found in the laundry and she swore was just a gift for girls' night. I remember asking where it came from and she waved it off with a laugh. Now I knew. She sat on the edge of the bed waiting. The lighting was soft, almost flattering, and for one second, I remembered how beautiful she was when we first met. That version of her lived in my head like a photo album, untouched, golden, honest. But that version of her wasn't in this room. A man stepped into the frame next. I couldn't see his face clearly at first. He was tall, dark hair, maybe in his early 40s. He wore a button-down shirt unbuttoned just enough to show he was trying. He walked straight to her like they'd done this before. Like this wasn't new. She smiled. Not the tired, polite smile she gave me at the dinner table. This one was different. Real. Soft around the edges. He reached out, brushed her hair back, and cupped her face. She leaned into it like instinct. Like habit. His hand moved to her waist. Her fingers trailed across his shoulder up to the nape of his neck. Her eyes fluttered shut. I should have stopped the video. I didn't. Not because I wanted to watch it. but because I had to. Because seeing the thing, the actual thing, was the only way to erase any doubt. I had spent weeks guessing. Now I needed proof that guessing time was over. They didn't speak. Not at first. It was the kind of silence that didn't need words. A familiarity that made my stomach clench. Then she laughed. Softly. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. It wasn't loud or showy. It was vulnerable. An asterisk mate. Like she was sharing a secret. I leaned back in my chair, hands gripping the armrests so tightly my knuckles ached. They lay down together, still fully dressed. Nothing graphic. Nothing overt. But the way their bodies folded into each other said enough. His fingers traced the outline of her jaw. She looked at him like he was a compass and she'd been lost. At one point, she said something I couldn't make out. The mic didn't catch it, or maybe it wasn't meant to be caught. But whatever it was, it made him smile, and he kissed her forehead like he was staking a claim. I paused the video. It was worse than I expected. Not because of what they did, but because of what they didn't have to say. There was no awkwardness. No guilt. Just comfort. Confidence. A rhythm that had clearly been rehearsed. I let it play again, skipping to the final moments. Taylor was lying on her side, facing him. He ran his hand across her back in slow, lazy circles. She reached for his hand, held it to her chest, and whispered something. This time I heard it. This is the only place that feels right. The camera kept rolling for a few more seconds. Then she closed her eyes and smiled. The screen went black. End of video. No credits. No context. I sat there in stunned silence, the hum of the computer fan the only sound in the room. Max stirred under the desk, sensing my tension but not understanding it. I reached for the mouse and ejected the flash drive like it might detonate if I left it in too long. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I always thought I'd fall apart if something like this ever happened. You hear stories, people breaking down, smashing things, begging for explanations. But me? I just felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell upright. Taylor had given me the truth. She just hadn't told me she was doing it. And that was the part one couldn't wrap my head around. Why leave it here? Why not delete it? Why not keep hiding? Maybe she wanted to get caught. Maybe that's what all of this was, coming home unexpectedly, dropping the drive, the slip-ups and strange behavior. A trail of breadcrumbs disguised as carelessness. A way to end things without saying the words out loud. I stood up, walked to the window and looked out over our street. Empty. Quiet. Our neighbor's kid rode past on a scooter, completely unaware that one house over, someone's world had just cracked open. Back at my desk, I tucked the flash drive into a drawer and shut it. Not out of denial. Just because I didn't want to look at it anymore. The proof was no longer necessary. I'd seen enough. Later that evening, when Taylor got home, she was all lightness again. A kiss on the cheek. "Are you doing okay?" as she walked toward the bedroom. She didn't notice anything had changed. Or maybe she did. Maybe she was waiting for me to say something. Challenge her. Confront her. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something in me had shifted. A line had been crossed, not with shouting, not with violence, but with the quiet certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. And I was done guessing. I didn't pack much. A few changes of clothes. My old camera. A tattered paperback I hadn't opened in years. I left my laptop on the desk, still open to a half-edited user manual. Didn't even close the blinds. I just walked through the house like I was stepping out for groceries instead of leaving my life behind. Taylor was already asleep when I left. Or pretending to be. She hadn't said much that evening. Made some excuse about a headache. Skipped dinner. Went straight to bed. That used to worry me. I would have offered tea or sat at the edge of the mattress until she let me in. But this time, I stood in the doorway for 5 seconds, staring at her outline beneath the covers, and then turned away. I got in the car and drove north. No destination, no plan. Just the need to move. To escape the walls that had become witnesses to something I couldn't unsee. I ended up at the lake. My dad had bought a cabin there when I was 12. Back then, it was the definition of bare bones. 2 rooms, a fireplace that smoked too much, and a dock that leaned slightly to the left. We used to fish off that dock every summer, even though neither of us liked fishing. It was more about the silence than the sport. After he passed, the cabin sat empty for years. We never sold it. Taylor always said we should rent it out, make some passive income. I always told her I'd get around to it. I guess I finally did. When I got there, the place looked exactly as I remembered, except smaller. Time does that. Shrinks everything that used to feel enormous. I unlocked the front door with a key I wasn't even sure would still work. It did. The air inside was cold and stale. I didn't bother turning on the heat. Just dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto the dusty couch like I hadn't moved in years. My phone buzzed constantly for the first hour. Calls, texts, all from Taylor. I didn't read them. I didn't want her words. Not her damage control. Not her confusion. And definitely not her apologies. One notification preview caught my eye, though not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. It was just a single line. "Did you open the drive?" "No, I'm sorry. No, we need to talk." Just fear. Naked and immediate. That told me more than any confession ever could. I turned off my phone and stuffed it in my bag. That was the last time I looked at it that night. The first night I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, watching moonlight crawl across the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud. My brain kept spinning, replaying the video in fragments. Not the physical parts. The expressions. The way she looked at him. That soft, quiet joy I hadn't seen in her for months. Maybe longer. By morning, I was numb. I walked out to the dock and just stood there, letting the cold bite through my jacket. The lake was still. A thin layer of mist hung just above the surface like the whole place was exhaling. I picked up a rock and hurled it as far as I could. Then another. And another. I didn't stop until my arms burned and my palms stung from gripping the cold stones. I was trying to exhaust the rage out of me. Burn it away through motion. It didn't work. That afternoon, I lit a fire and stared at it for 3 hours. I didn't eat. Didn't drink. Just watched the flames turn wood into ash and thought, maybe this is how it ends. Quiet. Slow. Without answers. Because I still didn't have them. I knew what she'd done. I had the proof. But I didn't know why. And that part? That's what kept twisting the knife. We hadn't been perfect, sure. But we weren't broken. At least not in a way I understood. We still laughed. We still touched. We still shared a bed and talked about vacations and plans and grocery lists. So when did the distance start? When did she decide to step out instead of step toward? And why the flash drive? Why leave it where I could find it? That second day I wrote a letter. Not to her. To myself. I wrote out every memory I could think of from the last year. The good. The bad. The small things. I wrote about the night we stayed up until 2 a.m. watching reruns and eating cereal on the floor. I wrote about the morning she cried because her boss embarrassed her in a meeting. I wrote about the silence after arguments. The forgiveness that felt increasingly performative. The way she'd started hugging me like a roommate, not a husband. When I was done, I read it over and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Because looking at it all together on paper, I could see the pattern. I could see where it began to shift. The erosion hadn't happened overnight. It had started slow. Imperceptible cracks, soft lies, little absences disguised as busyness. And I had let it happen. I hadn't caused it, but I had ignored it, looked away, rationalized, chosen comfort over confrontation. And now here I was, alone in a cabin with no service and a stomach full of gravel. That night I slept for the first time. It wasn't restful. I dreamed of hotel hallways and muffled voices, of chasing Taylor through endless corridors that led nowhere. But I didn't wake up shaking. That was something. On the third day, I found my dad's old axe and chopped wood just to feel something. Every swing was a release. Every crack of bark splitting felt earned. Max barked from the porch, confused but entertained. Later, I brewed weak coffee over the fire and sat with it on the dock. I watched the sun fade behind the trees and thought about the version of me that used to live back home. The version who trusted without question. Who believed that marriage was a fortress, not a stage set with trapdoors. He was gone. In his place was someone new. Someone tired. But someone awake. And I knew then I couldn't go back. Not just to the house. Not just to Taylor. But to who I'd been when this all started. Because there are some things you can't unknow. Some images you can't unsee. Some betrayals that calcify into bone. By the end of the third night, I had made my decision. I would go back. Not to stay. Not to talk. But to gather the pieces of my life that were still mine. And to leave the rest behind. When I finally drove back into the city, it felt like returning to a house I had rented in someone else's name. Nothing looked different, same cracked driveway, same uneven blinds in the upstairs window, but the air was heavier. Like even the house itself knew I didn't belong there anymore. I parked on the street instead of pulling into the garage. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want the motion sensor light to flicker on like a welcome sign. Maybe I didn't want this place greeting me like I was still its owner. Max hesitated before hopping out. He sniffed the air like he recognized something wrong in it. Smart dog. The door was locked. I stood there for a second before unlocking it, not out of hesitation, but because I half expected it not to be. Like maybe she'd changed the locks already. Taken full ownership of the illusion. But the key turned just fine. Inside, the house looked untouched. Too untouched. Like she'd gone out of her way to leave everything exactly as it was before I left, shoes lined up neatly by the mat, my jacket still hanging on the hook, even the mail stacked by the fruit bowl, like she thought I'd come back and appreciate the effort. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a museum. A well-curated exhibit of a life we used to have. I dropped my bag by the stairs and didn't bother unpacking. I wasn't staying. I was just here to collect the essentials, documents, drives, account info. The parts of myself I couldn't afford to lose in the fire. I moved through the rooms methodically, drawer by drawer, like I was looting my own past. Birth certificate, passport, external hard drives, tax files. The box with my dad's watch. A few old notebooks with passwords I hadn't updated since 2015. All of it went into a duffel bag I once used for weekend trips with Taylor. Trips that now felt like stories someone else told me. I was halfway through pulling old bank statements out of the file cabinet when I heard the soft creak of the bedroom door. She stepped out barefoot, wearing one of my old college t-shirts. The faded maroon one with the frayed neckline. I'd stopped wearing it years ago. She always said it was her favorite. Said it felt like me. Now it just looked like a costume. "Hey," she said softly, as if we were just starting another morning. I looked up at her. She looked calm. But behind her eyes was something else. Not guilt. Not sadness. Something tighter. Sharper. She leaned against the doorway like it was still her house too. Like we weren't standing on opposite ends of something that couldn't be rebuilt. "I didn't know if you were coming back," she said. "I'm not," I replied. She nodded slowly. "You're just here to pack up." "Yeah." She stepped closer, arms crossed loosely. "You didn't answer any of my messages." "I read enough." A pause stretched between us. She looked down at her bare feet, then back up. "Can we talk?" "What's left to say?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see the machinery in her head working, trying to sort what version of herself to present. The broken one? The angry one? The misunderstood one? She started, then sighed. "I didn't mean for you to find the video." That stopped me. I turned to her, finally looking straight into her face. "Then why leave it?" She blinked. "Once. Twice. I don't know. Maybe part of me wanted to be found out. Maybe I was tired of pretending. You could have told me." "I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because you didn't see me anymore," she said, the words tumbling out fast now like she'd rehearsed them. "You were always in your head. Always at that desk. You never really asked how I was doing. And I needed something that felt like I mattered." I stared at her. Not angry. Not moved. Just tired. "You think that justifies what you did?" "No," she said. "But it's the truth." There it was again. That word. Truth. Like saying it made it noble. "The truth isn't a defense, Taylor. It's a fact. You can't use it as a bandage." She bit her lip, but not like she was nervous. Like she was frustrated. Like she couldn't believe I wasn't giving her more room to shift the narrative. "You don't even want to try?" she asked. "To fix this?" I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. "You made a movie, Taylor. You documented it. You edited your own betrayal into something permanent. And now you're asking me to pretend it was a rough patch." Her face flushed. "I didn't plan it. It just happened." "No, it didn't. People don't just fall into hotel beds with other people by accident. That's not a stumble. That's a decision. And then another. And another." She looked away. "You don't have to yell." "I'm not yelling." And I wasn't. My voice was level. My hands weren't shaking. That's what scared her the most, I think. "You're really done," she said quietly. I nodded. "I was done the second I watched you rest your head on someone else's shoulder like it was home." That landed. She didn't argue after that. She just stood there. Frozen. Not by grief, by disbelief. Not that I had left. But that I hadn't come back to be salvaged. She thought she could steer the story again. Pull me back into a version where we both messed up and we needed to rebuild. But this wasn't a two-player game anymore. She sat on the armrest of the couch while I packed the last of my files. Said nothing. Just watched me move through the house like a ghost sweeping up his final footprints. Before I left, I took one last look around the living room. Our wedding photo still sat on the mantel. I considered taking it down. Instead, I turned it around, face to the wall. Let the house look at itself for a while. Taylor didn't follow me out. She stayed inside and I didn't hear the door close behind me. I got in the car, started the engine, and didn't look back.